Day 2, 9.3. The reason why I separated it from day 1, we are going to solve quadratics, but this time by factoring. So good news is a quick review and remembrance on factoring, and then just add a step to be able to solve it. We have factored already in chapter 8, x squared plus 3x minus 18, threw it into two parentheses, made two binomials out of it. Now we're going to solve it when we're done, so we have to have it equal to 0. Just like when we solve by graphing, it has to equal 0. If a quadratic does not equal 0, you don't solve it. Well, you do, but you have to make sure it equals 0 first. Got to do the math. So let's go into the factoring. Reminder on the two parentheses that we split up the x squared into x and x. We need two numbers that when multiplying it makes negative 18. If you need to, go back and do your chart. They multiply to make negative 18, but add to make 3. Use whatever numbers you need. 1, 2, 3. This would be negative 18, negative 9, negative 6. But then all of your answers are negative. You don't want them to be negative. You want them to be positive. So switch. Make sure that your negatives go over here. Again, I just whipped through that super fast, but that's because that was review. What do you find out are your two binomials? X minus 3 and x plus 6. Either one of those could equal 0, and our whole answer will equal 0. If I take a number times 0, I get 0. If I take 0 times a number, I get 0. So I can work with something as simple as just x minus 3 equals 0 and find out what x equals. It's a nice, once we get it factored, it's a nice one-step solving equation. You add 3 to both sides, and you find out that x equals 3. But you also found out from our graphs yesterday, or the last lesson, that you could have two answers. Well, that's because x plus 6 could also equal 0. So I'm going to minus 6 from both sides and get x equals negative 6. So your two answers to this one quadratic could either be x equals 3 or x equals negative 6 after you factor it and solve it. If you don't believe me, plug it in. Grab your calculator. 3 squared plus 3 times 3 minus 18, hit equals. I bet it tells you 0. Negative 6 in parentheses squared plus 3 times negative 6 minus 18, hit equals. It'll tell you it's 0. Let's try this one. We have x squared minus 2x minus 24. We need to factor it into two parentheses. Might take you a little while to come up with two factors that multiply to make negative 24, but add to make negative 2. It's x and x. You know you've got to have one of each, otherwise it'll never be negative. The biggest number has to be negative to make it negative 2. The smallest number is positive. And again, if you can't get to that quickly, use your chart. Divide them out on a calculator. Solve each one on its own. X plus 4 equals 0. What value of x would make that come out to be 0? If x is negative 4, because negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Do the same for the x minus 6 equals 0. If you add 6 to both sides, you get x equals 6. Negative 4 and positive 6 are your two answers. If you can come up with the two factors, it goes rather quickly. Probably the toughest part for many is to come up with those two factors. Especially in a problem like this, you have y squared plus 5y equals 6. There are all too many people that will use the factors of 6 and 1 because 6 times 1 is 6 and 6 minus 1 is 5. But these are positive. Everything has to be positive. The only two numbers that add to make 5 but multiply to make 6 are 2 and 3. Solve each binomial separately. Y plus 2 equals 0 or y plus 3 equals 0. Solve this one by subtracting 2 from both sides. You find out y equals negative 2. Solve this one by minusing 3 from both sides. You find out y equals negative 3. This one will also ask us to solve by factoring, but like I said right away in the very beginning, it cannot equal 0. It can't equal 33. It has to equal 0. The only way that we can solve this is if it equals 0. So we're going to have to get this 33 back over to the other side where it belongs. If you minus it from this side, you must minus it over here. There are no like terms, so I'm just going to write them down in order. W squared plus 8w minus 33 equals 0. You need to come up with two binomials. What factors of 33 will add to make 8? But actually we're not adding, we're minusing. Because that's a negative, there will have to be one positive and one negative. The bigger number is positive, the smaller number is negative. Solve each one of these, and yes, I probably will let you start shortcutting these in your head. If w plus 11 equals 0, then the only way for that to work is if w equals negative 11. And over here, w is going to have to equal positive 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. And what if they put the negative 11x on the wrong side? X squared plus 18 equals negative 11x. Can't solve a quadratic that doesn't equal 0. Well, 90% of them. You'll find out when you can. Plus 11x, get rid of it over here. Plus 11x, notice where I'm writing it so that it ends up in the middle. You have x squared plus 11x plus 18 equals 0. Let's factor that out into two parentheses. That equals 0. Maybe pause the video and see if you can come up with those two numbers yourself rather than just relying on me. Okay? Did you get a positive 9 and a positive 2? Order doesn't matter. Our two answers are x equals negative 2 and negative 9. Order doesn't matter. You could put x equals negative 9 and negative 2. Let's just do a couple more. You've got x squared plus 4x minus 5. Again, pause the video. Try to do this one on your own. Okay, bring it back after you've paused it. Hopefully you've got the same two factors I did. Order doesn't matter. But your two answers are x equals negative 5 and 1. Make sure you have x equals. Do the same for this one. I know some get tricked by that 1 that's in the middle. But think about it for a while and see if you can come up with two factors of negative 30 that add up to make negative 1. Okay, you're back. We did talk about this when we did factoring before we solved. The only way that this can be a 1 in the middle or a negative 1 is if these two numbers are right next to each other. Because what's 6 minus 5 or negative 6 plus 5? If it's a 6 and a 5 or a 4 and a 3 or a 7 and an 8 or a 12 and a 13, those are the numbers you're looking for to try to get that 1 or negative 1 in the middle. And last one. Rearrange it, factor it, solve it, and then come back and see if you got it right. Okay, you're back, and hopefully remember that you can't solve it unless it equals 0. You added 16 over to the other side, and recognize that the only way you could get a positive number back here with a negative in the middle is if you took a negative times a negative is a positive, but a negative plus a negative is a negative, and your final answer should come out to x equals 8, 2. All right, that's it. Good luck solving by factoring.